Hello and welcome to another edition of Foxxy Reviews. Today we have a childhood favorite of mine called Kingdom Under Fire the Crusaders for the original Xbox. It was released in late 2004, developed by a South Korean studio called Fantagram. Fantagram is not a well-known company. They haven't made all that many games throughout their existence, which started back in 1994. The only two titles outside of the Kingdom Under Fire franchise that people may know of include Phantom Crash on the Xbox and a game I previously reviewed titled 99 Nights. There is a Kingdom Under Fire game that was released on the 360 called Circle of Doom, which turned out to be a major flop. But anyway, the game was made by another company called Blueside. Blueside helped co-develop 99 Nights and both the Kingdom Under Fire games on the Xbox. But outside of that and self-developing Circle of Doom, they haven't really done much of anything else. Well, that's not entirely true. You see, Blueside has been developing Kingdom Under Fire 2. However, the game was announced in 2008 and was set to be released in 2010, 2011, 2013, and even May of 2014. So do I ever expect to see an actual release of this game in the US or Europe for that matter? At this point, no. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if the companies involved go bankrupt and the entire thing gets canceled altogether. Anyway, even though this is one of my favorite games growing up, I'm not going to let nostalgia or personal feelings get in the way of making this a fair and unbiased review. So let's get started. To sum up the story as best I can, there are two separate factions, humans and the Dark Legion. Now, these two factions have never been all that friendly with each other in the first place. However, one day some Dark Legion forces completely massacred a human village, and that sparked a whole new war. There is much more to the story, but even though this game is over 10 years old, I'm not about to spoil it. I'll spoil a story on a shitty game like a Rogue Warrior or a Legendary, but not something like this. You have 4 characters to choose from. Both Kendall's and Rainier's campaigns are locked until you beat the first two, those being Gerald's and Lucretia's. I want to say each campaign will take you around 3 to 6 hours max. The only negative thing I can point out about the campaign as a whole is that once you complete a campaign, you can't just go back and play whatever mission you want. Which is very disappointing because then it forces you to make separate save files in case you do want to replay a mission that you really enjoyed, and you only get up to 15 save files max. It's not a huge deal, but it would have been nice if they included like a free play type mode or even a new game plus. When it comes to the graphics, Kingdom Under Fire is a pretty nice looking game, but it's definitely not visually impressive by any means, and there's a good reason for that. The big problem with just about every single war-like hack-and-slash game on the PS2, Xbox, and GameCube generation of consoles is that they all have some varying degree of frame rate issues. When there is too much stuff happening on screen, the frame rate will drop sometimes to an abysmal rate of like 10 or 15 frames per second. Now, with Kingdom Under Fire, this frame rate problem still happens, but it's not all that common. Why does this relate to the whole not being visually impressive comment I made earlier? Well, you see, if Fantagram were to sit there and really beef up the graphics, what will end up happening is that, yes, the game will look much prettier, you'll run into frame rate issues a lot more frequently because the system just wouldn't be able to handle it. Now, having said that, I do like the detail work they did on the character models as well as the lighting they used in the game. The one complaint that I can make regarding the graphics is that some of the battlefields can get a little bland, or it feels like there's not that much of a difference between, say, Mission 3 of someone's campaign and Mission 5. Other than maybe the tree placements being different or something minor like that. It's worth noting that this game is backwards compatible with the 360, so if you don't have or want an original Xbox, you can still pick up and play this game on the 360 instead. It's also worth pointing out that if you do plan to play this on the 360, the color saturation appears much better, however you are limited to playing this on the standard 4x3 format instead of widescreen. The voice acting tends to vary from decent to just plain awful depending on which character is talking. And speaking of the voice work, there is one strange thing that happens. They censor out the word patriarch whenever it's supposed to be said.
It's orders, and we live to serve. For what it's worth, I agree with you, Ellen.
There's nothing but snow.
What about my father?
General Kendall, the seeks your audience.
Kendall, to battle. Bring down those guards. I shall come with you. Those cursed fools.
What do you mean, Your Holiness?
When I was younger, I always wondered, why would they do that? Well, I did a little snooping around online, and Fantagram felt uncomfortable using the word Pope, fearing that it would offend Catholics. The funny thing is that they had already done the voice work ahead of time, so what they ended up doing was replacing the word Pope with Patriarch in the subtitles and censoring out the word Pope whenever a character is supposed to say it. It kind of reminds me of the whole Medal of Honor 2010 Taliban controversy. For those that don't know or don't remember what I'm talking about, basically EA DICE thought that making the Taliban a playable faction in the multiplayer was a brilliant idea. Needless to say, this did not go over well in the slightest. The gameplay of Kingdom Under Fire the Crusaders combines elements from RTS, RPG, and hack and slash games. It may sound strange on paper, but the combination is executed very well, and I don't believe I've seen any other game like this. Kingdom Under Fire is by no means a mindless hack and slash game where you can simply bum rush anyone and everyone without having any problems. You simply cannot do that in this game. You really need to go about things more strategically. You need to utilize and command whatever units you have to your advantage. If you don't, you'll end up going down extremely quick. For example, don't sit there and have your archers get into a melee fight. Pull them back and let them provide cover fire for your other units. Or use your sappers to make a wall of traps so that you can lure the enemy into them, causing massive damage. There's so many options that you have in so many different ways you can go about each mission. You obtain XP and money at the end of each mission, which you then use to upgrade your units. XP is gained by killing enemy soldiers, and if you lose a unit in battle, any XP that unit gained is now gone forever. So if one or more of your units are severely injured, pull them back somewhere safe so that they don't die and you can keep that XP. Upgrading or changing classes is very straightforward. You simply go and see whatever class you want, look at their skill requirements, and adjust as needed. So if you want a group of paladins for whatever reason, you need to buy the Holy Magic skill and upgrade that to 6, as well as upgrade that same unit's melee skill to 15. That's really all there is to it. It's very simple to understand, thankfully. They didn't sit there and try to make the menus or any of that whole process needlessly complicated. I sort of mentioned this with that paladin comment, but you can give your units magical abilities if you want. Usually when I play as humans, I don't really bother with offensive-based magic. I just make sure that both my main unit and my archers have healing magic because believe me, you'll be using them a lot. I'll use offensive magic like Vine or Meteor every now and then, but only if there's a ton of enemies on screen. Not that they're shit magic or anything, it's just only worth using when there's so many enemies. The controls are for the most part straightforward. It may take some time to familiarize yourself with switching back and forth between units while commanding them at the same time, but once you get used to that feeling, you realize that the controls aren't all that complicated. The camera can get annoying, yes. Sometimes it feels like it has a mind of its own, but of all the games I've ever played that have ungodly bad camera stuff going on, Kingdom Under Fire's is not even close to being considered as bad. Each character has their own unique movesets, and some characters are much more powerful than others. The only complaint that I have is each character only has like 1 or 2 combos that you can perform, so unfortunately the movesets are pretty limited and get repetitive really quick. There's a pretty decent variety of missions consisting of kill all enemies, escort, defense, move to the designated point, and so on. Most of the missions you will have allied AI with you, and they do a pretty decent job depending on the actual mission you're playing. As for the enemy AI, it depends on who you're playing with. You'll find that in Gerald's campaign, the AI is a little sloppy at times and not all that smart. But once you get to Rainier's or Kendall's campaigns, the enemy starts to get really brutal. But again, if you set up your units right and know what you're doing for the most part, you can manage just fine. About, 70% of the difficulty seems to be based off what units you're bringing into battle and how you upgraded them. You see, you can't just bring nothing but infantry into a battle. You have to bring a variety, something like 1 infantry, 1 archer unit, and a cavalry unit, for example. Before each mission, they'll let you know whether or not there's going to be any special units like enemy cavalry or flying stuff so that you can change your units appropriately. Now, to be fair, some of these missions are an absolute nightmare. Most notably is Rainier's first mission, where you are very underleveled, going up against not only a large amount of enemies, but those who can cast magic every now and again. When it comes to missions like these, it takes a lot of strategy and patience to get through it without wanting to kill yourself, and I understand why players can get frustrated with missions like these.
I'm here to obey. Fire it there!
I go to hell for Alaska!
Now, of course, is my final thoughts. Despite some of the negatives like the spotty voice acting, the limited movesets, and not being able to replay missions, Kingdom Under Fire the Crusaders still remains to this day to be easily one of my favorite games of all time. Do I recommend this game? Yes, I do, but you have to keep in mind that there's a lot of strategy involved, and it'll take time to get used to. It's not a simple pick up and play sort of game. Like I said, it's a challenging game, but about 70% of the game's challenge is dependent on how you set up your units and how you prepare for the next mission. And with that said, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this surprisingly longer than expected review. Either way, thank you very much for watching, and take care.
Their leader's still alive.
Looks pitiful. What's your name, monkey?
Walden!
Not as good looking as that Gerald, but still nice.
He's useless. Kill him. You should have run, monkey.